Here are a few things I wish I knew before applying to Japanese language school. Note that I'll be speaking from my experience attending ARC Academy in Kyoto, Japan, so some things may not apply to all language schools. First things first, the entrance exam. Surprisingly, a lot of people who have prior experience with Japanese do very poorly at the entrance exam. Classes are split into about 8 or 9 levels, and if you don't want to waste your time and $1,000+ relearning basic Japanese, plus a few new things you could have learned on your own, then understand how they're going to test you and actually study. Figure out the textbook that they're going to use and study each grammar point from the beginner's book. There's usually also a spoken test that uses those grammar points. Be able to write hiragana and katakana, and finally learn your kanji. 50 to 300 kanji is considered elementary level. If you don't know 50, you're likely going to be placed in level 1 regardless of how good your other skills are. I met a classmate who passed the JLPT N2 and was still placed in level 2 because her speaking ability and understanding of grammar wasn't up to par with her kanji ability. Her native language was Mandarin, so she kind of had a huge advantage too. Luckily, despite performing poorly on the entrance exam, I was not placed in level 1 where you learn hiragana and katakana again, but I was placed in level 2, which is N5 going into N4, where I felt like I was reviewing some things still, but I still learned a good amount. Level 3 would have been nice though, since that's N4 entering N3. Anyways, this is one of the most important lessons to understand before entering language school, since you really don't want to be stuck relearning things for 3 months just because you were too lax with the entrance exam. And if you're brand new to Japanese, I still recommend you try studying a bit so that you can keep up with level 1, since it does go pretty fast, according to my friends who knew zero Japanese when they entered. It is indeed possible to fail the course and have to redo the level. I've met people that had to do that. Another thing to note ahead of time is that depending on your school, they may do intermediate classes and beginner classes at separate times. So levels 1 to 3 for ARC Academy in Kyoto were from 1:30 to 4:45 p.m., while the later levels were in the morning, somewhere around 9:30 to 12:45, I believe. I personally enjoyed the mornings exploring temples and nature, but I think the vice versa time would have been nice as well. Next, be sure to apply for Japanese language school ahead of time. I actually contacted Gogo Nihon around July to August and officially applied in September for a January start term. According to them, classes can get filled pretty fast, so I personally would always try to do 3 months prior just in case, but I believe 2 months prior is still doable. Another thing that may be important to note is that you can only miss classes a limited amount of days. This is especially important if you have a student visa, because if you miss too many days of class, you can technically get the visa revoked. For me, I did 3 months, so I didn't need a student visa, but I still only skipped 1 day of class to explore a bit more with my friend. Try your best not to skip exam days because you may not get to take that exam again. That's actually what happened to my friend because she wanted to study for an extra day, so she pretended she was sick, and then because of that, she missed the exam and they did not issue a retake, so she almost failed the class. So definitely be careful. Anyways, about student visas, they only issue it for people who are there for 6 months or longer. Each class term is for 3 months, so my friends who did level 1 finished in 3 months and then proceeded to level 2 for another 3 months after about a 2-week break in between, and then the cycle continues. Technically, I could have done another term if I left the country after the first term ended and then re-entered it before the second term began. I was told this by someone working there, since they ask you about the next term about 1 month into the first term that you're doing, since they prioritize readmitting returning students versus admitting brand new ones for the next term. So basically that means if you're doing more than 1 term, you're going to see some recurring people and also some new people. Another thing to note is that you're only allowed to stay 90 days in a row and for a total of 180 days in a year in Japan if you're on a tourist visa. So if I did another full term, I would basically just not be able to come back to Japan for the rest of the year until the new year on January 1st has finally come, and that's when the 180-day count resets. So keep that in mind if you're trying it out for 1 term on a tourist visa and thinking about going back. Also note, I'm American, so some rules might be different for different countries. And another very important tip is if you're applying from Gogo Nihon, like I mentioned in my short video, they will also help you with finding a place to stay. In Kyoto, I stayed at Oak House and Borderless House. I thought both share houses were great stays, clean, people were friendly, and staff was very helpful. However, if your goal is to learn Japanese as fast as possible while also making lots of friends, I do recommend share houses like Borderless House, where they set up the environment to be half Japanese and half foreigners. That way, you get to interact with native speakers all the time. I moved share houses from Oak House to Borderless because my friend invited me to their Borderless share house to hang out, and it seriously opened my eyes to what the optimized living situation should be if you want to learn the most Japanese possible. And also, I definitely made a lot of friends this way, both foreign and Japanese, so I'm super grateful for my school friends for showing me their share houses. Definitely very important to choose the right place to stay. I recommend doing your own research here instead of just going with the flow with your helper from Gogo Nihon, like what I did. I also went into more detail with the share houses in separate videos where I review them and also talk about the price and whatnot, so check that out if you're interested. And finally, just a quick word about the class itself and what to expect. Usually class sizes are about 15 to 20 people. In terms of how much you learn in one day, it's a good amount. It's like trying to cover basically a chapter a day. So it is kind of fast. So if you don't know anything, definitely it's going to be hard to keep up. For me, it wasn't that difficult because some of it was review and some of it was new. And some of it was just reinforcing the things I already sort of knew. I think one of my weakest points was kanji. So I had to do some studying at least before the test, like right before the tests, in order to pass the kanji tests. That was actually my only B in the class. The rest were S's. And that granted me an overall score of A. But quite honestly, if we're talking about just pure learning experience, I don't think that the school was how I learned the most Japanese during my time. I actually didn't study that much when it came to just in general for the class. I probably studied an average of an hour per week outside of class, and usually I didn't do the homework. I was a really bad student basically, but I still feel like I learned a lot of Japanese because of all the interactions I got to have with native speakers. But again, I wouldn't have met that many native speakers if it weren't for my friends from the school. So for me personally, the best thing that the school did to teach me Japanese was connecting me with friends who connected me with native speakers. But either way, I still do think it was a good learning experience. Just not the most optimized learning experience, because I definitely did learn things while I was in class for sure. And I'll just leave it at that. Going to Japan, attending language school for 3 months, and exploring for about 5 months total in Japan was seriously one of the best experiences in my life, and I hope that some of you guys watching this have the opportunity and also take the opportunity to try something similar if it's something you really want to do. It's honestly not that hard of a process logistically, assuming that you have the money. Just difficult mentally to do because it's a brand new world and a lot of unknowns. But hopefully this video can help with demystifying some things and improve your experience if you decide to go for it. Anyways, if it was helpful, please give the video a like and consider subscribing, and feel free to leave any questions down below and I'll try to get to it. I'll catch you guys in the next one.